I'm Dan Brown, and for over 2 years I have been living on my narrowboat Tilly. At only 30 feet long, she is small even by boat standards, but she has everything I need on board to get by, and more importantly, Tilly enables me to live an active outdoors lifestyle in some of the fantastic Shropshire countryside. When I started to put this series together, I had a list of topics that I wanted to cover, but while discussing it with friends and family, it became apparent that there were a lot of misconceptions about life on a boat. So in this episode, we're going to take a step away from the stereotype of amazing summer cruising down tranquil canals and take it back to the basics and look at some of the realities of day-to-day narrowboat life. Welcome to my life afloat. One of the great things about living on a narrowboat is that you really do have a lot of flexibility to make the lifestyle your own and create your own unique brand of living on a boat. If you consider that across the UK there are thousands of people who live on boats, and then take a closer look at a few people's lives from there, you'll probably find that they differ wildly, rather than just being one uniform. If you live on a boat, this is how your life is. For example, you could have travelling traders and mechanics, engineers, artists. You could have people who spend all their time in a marina and maybe work a more traditional full-time job. And equally, you'll find plenty of people who are out enjoying the amazing countryside and scenic canals, just living out their retirement in nice peaceful surroundings. If you consider those are all people who live on boats, and that's the common theme, then you can easily start to see that although they live on boats, the actual life that they lead and the lifestyle they have is completely different. And similarly, if you stack my life up against any of those three, then none of them will look particularly familiar or similar, but there are of course elements from each one that all start to cross over. Even my own personal daily life goes through stark changing periods. Sometimes I may be travelling over 20 miles in a day. Other times I might find myself not switching the engine on in a marina for 4 weeks. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's hop on board and have a look at what I call home. First thing that you'll notice is this nice big open cruiser stern where I keep my bike, but also like to do any jobs that require a little bit of room, as well as sit out in the summer, folding chairs out, having your tea. Absolutely lovely, especially in surroundings like this. If we step down into the boat, see first of all obviously our mat for our shoes, but looking down the boat itself, we have got 15 foot of indoor space, so not a huge amount. Sofa bed to one side, which as it's the daytime is just set up as a general sofa, but over the night time is transformed with all of the bedding and pillows that I keep in these boxes here. Turning around to face that, we have got some general storage cupboards, clothes in this one and just general things and bits in this. Then moving swiftly on, we've got, as you would expect on a narrowboat, our wood burning stove there, which over the winter I use for cooking as well as heating, and of course I've got my little kettle to pop on the top. We've also got the kitchen that features a standard oven, 2 hobs, grill and general oven, obviously all very small. Food cupboard just next to that. And then moving to the other side, we've got our kitchen sink. Underneath that, cutlery storage, plates, saucers, anything that you would expect, cleaning products, all the usual kitchen things. At the very front, we've got this desk that I use to do all of my general writing and diary entries, record keeping and general bits of arty stuff. At the back of that is some more general storage. And through the front there, under the cratch cover that you saw from the front of the boat, is where I keep my wood for the winter. And obviously these are opening doors, so I can obviously nice and easily reach through in the winter times and get more wood for the fire. Towards the stern, we have got the shower room and toilet, which pretty much just has everything that you would expect to have. Of course, we've got the boiler in here as well as all the general toiletries that you would imagine. What I hope has been made a little clearer from that very quick look at the boat, that is perhaps sometimes overlooked, is that the fundamentals of running a household are always the same. You need to be able to have somewhere that you can keep yourself clean and keep the things around you clean, be able to cook, obviously be able to keep dry, be able to keep warm in the cold nights, and generally just have that shelter and fundamental basis of what you need to live your life. And obviously with a boat you have, as you've just seen, all of those things, but there are some things that are done slightly differently. With a narrowboat being a self-contained unit, there is of course only so much water and so much waste that you can store on board. Because of this, you need to think carefully and plan ahead for when you're going to be able to get to service points such as this, where often you'll find various means of emptying different styles of toilets and sewage sort of waste, and of course refill your water tank from points such as this, as well as in some cases offering general rubbish disposal and other facilities as well. This is definitely something that I make sure I plan and consider whenever I'm thinking of any longer trips. There are two areas that have also changed for me personally with my life as a continuous cruiser on a narrowboat, and that is generally doing shopping, but also getting in and out of work. Now, I'm very lucky that at the moment, in most cases, I'm still able to do that on my trusty bike here. But there are of course times where I'm too far away, or the weather's extreme conditions, or it's icy around, where I find myself taking the bus. And rather oddly, instead of just hopping out and walking down to the bus station, I obviously have the ability to move my entire home down the canal a little bit closer to the nearest bus stop. So that is something that I quite enjoy, having that general, oh yeah, I need to go to, I don't know, Shrewsbury, I need to go to Wrexham and do some general shopping. Right, where can we take the boat to that'll make that the easiest? Of course, sometimes you'll find yourself still not able to moor very close to the bus stop, and you'll find yourself walking loaded with shopping bags and bags on your back, walking down to the canal and then down the towpath until finally you find your boat. But at the moment, I'm enjoying that as all part of the fun and games. Now that we've had a look at some of the practical side of daily life on a narrowboat, I'm also very keen to dispel the myth that everybody who lives on a narrowboat is always on the canal and never does anything that isn't boat related, because that's simply not true. And to say it out loud may seem ridiculous, but the feeling that I get and the reactions that some people have when I tell them what I've been up to, and I'm not talking about just the canal and just living on a boat, is quite surprising in many cases. Even I was surprised on one occasion when I was helping a chap moor up his boat next to Tilly, and he announced to me that the reason that they were mooring up quite early was so that they could have an equally early start in the morning, but not on the boat, away to the airport so that they could go away to Spain for a week. And as much as that's not exactly what I expected to hear, it didn't shock me or make me feel like something outrageous was going on. However, when I told that to other people, it was as if they had said and were doing the most outrageous, crazy thing ever. The idea that somebody would go somewhere else other than their boat on holiday for a whole week. And as I say, it's very simple and sounds very silly to say it out loud, but of course myself, as do many other narrowboaters, enjoy full lives out in as much of the real world as possible. As these random clips have hopefully served to illustrate, it's not all about just stopping on a boat. After all, variety is the spice of life. Evenings and night times are some of my favourite things about living on a boat. It's amazing how peaceful, calm and quiet the canal can be in general, but there are some busy periods, such as the summer holidays that we're currently in, where you'll have a lot of people out enjoying the towpath and walking and biking, and of course plenty of people out on boats, and so that can lead to quite interesting times when you actually do get a bit of traffic on the canal, as sometimes it catches you by surprise and you're not used to having to queue up at locks for hours on end and things like that. But even at the busiest times, if you moor up, as I tend to do, in some of the more rural, out-of-the-way places, it is incredible how, as the sun sets over a couple of hours, people start to think about mooring up and having something to eat, and everybody who's out walking and biking tend to find their way home, and the canal suddenly becomes even more peaceful and tranquil than it is in the perfect quiet dead of winter. Having such perfect peaceful surroundings to sit down and write about me day or generally work on a new little project is definitely a huge advantage. Distraction free and ultimately calming. It's always a sign of how busy I am if there's a lot of writing pinned up to this wall, and as you can see, there is a lot of writing pinned up to that wall. Between writing, YouTubing, generally catching up with people online, I don't find that the long winter evenings in particular are particularly lonely or boring, but I can certainly say that sometimes when you hear very odd noises and creatures outside in the absolute dead of night, there's certainly moments where I start to think, ooh, what's going on out there? I'm not sure if I want to look through the window. One of my greatest joys is at the end of the day, whether I've been out biking or walking, whether I've been at work or visiting a friend, just being able to hop on my bike and then cycle out to the boat, knowing that where you're heading is going to be a beautiful, tranquil, rural space like this. And to have that as the end of the day and something to look forward to if you're not having a great day is a fantastic light at the end of the tunnel. It's equally great to just hop on board, lock the bike up and then get inside, switch the lights on and start to nestle down in your lovely peaceful home for the night. There's something that I like to do over the winter months in particular, which is set the fire up before I leave the boat in the morning or whenever I go out, in a way that means I'll just have to put a match underneath it to set the fire going, so I can pop in, do that first thing and then start to unpack any shopping I've done, and generally while I settle down to another night on board, the fire will already be getting itself roaring and underway. What a perfect way to end any kind of a day. Anyway, enough of just talking about what day-to-day life involves. Let's actually have a look at my past few days, and my goodness me, has it been eventful. What you're currently seeing is me in a rush. Yes, this is about as fast-paced as Narrowboat Life gets. As you can see, it's not particularly quick at all. The reason that I'm in a rush is because I'm heading up to the service station just by Maysbury. It's only a very short trip, not even a mile, but I know that I've got to get on my bike and ride into town so I can meet my friends so we can all go off to the Midlands to one of their parents' houses for the night, as just one of those general little trips that you tend to do every now and then. And as you can see, this is the chaotic rush and scramble to get to the services. Whoa, going at, I would say some points, almost 2 miles an hour. And here we are at the service station, just like it's previously been mentioned. We've got places to fill up with the water, which you can see me doing now. And obviously, you can't really rush the water, it travels as fast as it's going to. And then once that's full, I emptied one of the toilets and then headed just to the other side of this bridge so I could moor up. And it's really one of those things that demonstrates, even though I've got plans and I know I need to be in town at a certain time, when you're out in such quiet, calm places as this, as you can see me mooring up here, there's not really much point in trying to rush because you just can't. At this point, I hopped onto my bike and rode into town with a sleeping bag on my back. I went to my mum's house as a nice safe place to leave my bike and also an easy point of reference to be picked up by my friends. Hopped in their car and off we disappeared into the Midlands to one of their parents' houses. All very nice, very enjoyable time as usual. And of course, you can't take me anywhere that close to a canal without me actually stopping and having a look. I was quite a fan of these rather unusual swivel styles that I've never come across anywhere before in my life. But also, I quite liked these locks. They didn't seem as big and bulky as the ones that I'm used to, and you can see there with the rounded edges too. But also, even the actual crank mechanism itself was a little different, and as you can see, slanted away, a lot more minimalist almost, but slanted away from the lock, and well, it was just nice and interesting to see a different style for a change. The following day, came back in the morning, hopped on my bike from my mum's house, back out to the boat, and then started travelling again. Once again, we're travelling on this absolutely perfect, beautiful rural canal, heading from Maysbury up to the top end where it rejoins with the Llangollen Canal. And This was a trip that I had to make as I'd spent my maximum 14 days on the canal, had my 14th night overnight before the following day going back up onto the Llangollen. And as you can see, it's just that perfect, beautiful, quiet canal, even though it was a relatively busy day. And as I wasn't sure whether there'd be room to moor at the very top end I was heading up to, I moored up after doing one of the locks, got on my bike, rode what ended up being about a 5 mile round trip just to check whether there was mooring room or not, then came back down to the boat and carried on going through the locks and tootled my way all the way up the canal. As you can see, it's not, well, as that very idea of stopping the boat, getting on my bike, riding 5 miles in the middle of a boat trip, it sums up how relaxed and calm, and especially in the weather, you can see the blue sky in the background there. This really is just the beautiful summary of how idyllic narrowboat life can be in the good weather and on these wonderful rural canals. Of course, it's not always like that, but when you finally find your mooring point for the night, just as the sun's setting like here, I cannot ask for anything more than this in my life. Perfect rural, peaceful canal. I get to be out in places like this, wearing me slippers because I'm still really only on the doorstep, sometimes literally, and yet these are the places that you can moor up. And this, as I say, was one of the necessary trips that I had to make, and still, how perfect it was that the elements, the weather, and just the general boat trip all aligned to be perfect and plant me right here in this fantastic scenery. The following day I found that the engine was playing up, so as I went up through the locks I moored up a lot earlier than I was intending to on the Llangollen, but still, it's all part of the experience and the fact that even if you have trouble like that, you are actually taking your entire home with you everywhere you go, so you can just moor up and still be right at home. Well, my friends, I'm afraid to say that our time together has finally come to an end, for now at least. I hope that you've enjoyed this quick look into my life afloat, and will stay tuned for the next episode soon. If you are very interested, then please feel free to check out almost 200 narrowboat videos that are already on my YouTube channel. And if you'd like to help me out and support me as an indie author, then please feel free to check out my Kindle books, The Narrowboat Lad, The Narrowboat Lad Living the Dream, and A Narrowboat and a Notebook. You should also feel free to add me personally on Facebook and Twitter for all sorts of boaty pictures and updates, and of course feel free to like the Facebook page. Until the next time, I hope that you have a fantastic day, and I hope to see you around soon. Farewell.